What is up, App Nation? Welcome to another Friday YouTube live stream where we really look at your apps, share what's working, and I always try to find a good guest because frankly, I'm sick of talking all the time. And I really wanted to get this guy on. He was going to do a podcast interview with me. And I said, you know what, David, why don't you just come on to the YouTube live stream? You're a great indie success story. And then we can answer a lot of questions from the audience as well. And so he said, agreed, and we bumped it up, and now he's here. So if you guys aren't familiar with this guy right here, he is David Barnard. He is the founder of Contrast, really great apps, Launch Center Pro being one of them. So go check out his apps through the website, contrast.co. And he just recently joined as a developer advocate for RevenueCat. So if you got a subscription-based app, we're going to talk a lot about subscriptions and how David's been able to generate millions of downloads for his apps, get multiple Apple features, and actually exit a few of his apps for like 7 figures plus. Right, David?
Close to 7 figures.
Okay. I was looking through your website, your personal website as well, kind of going through some research. But welcome to the show, David.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me. It's always great to chat. You and I go way back. I forget, but or you may forget, but I was part of your Facebook mastermind for a little bit.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah,
we had some conversations about some ASO tactics too.
Yeah, we did.
Back in the day when it was fun stuff. So I want to give some shout outs. So Danny's here. What's up, Daniel? And then we've got Flutteris. Cool. It looks like it's an app name. And then we got hi, Steve. So Priyanshu, welcome. And then Joe is here. What's up, Joe? Hi, David and Steve. All right, David, let's start with this, man. Like with some of the app ideas that you've been able to generate, like tell me about how you think about the app ideas. I know I read through it. You're like, hey, I just really wanted to create an app for myself. But talk to me about any type of market research you do when you're thinking about app ideas.
Yeah, I mean, over the years, I've done a ton of market research and thought a lot about this, like what, so when you have the resources to build an app, figuring out what to build, and when you're good at building apps, I mean, I built 20 plus apps over the last 12 years. The question of what to build becomes more and more and more important to prioritize your time and build the best possible. So, I'll be honest though. I mean, I feel like I'm the starving artist indie developer that keeps shooting himself in the foot. So I went into the weather category because I just wanted a weather app. And I did enough market research to understand how competitive the weather category was going to be, but I didn't fully anticipate just how brutal it would be going into such a competitive space. Mm-hmm. And that actually led to a lot of what I've been known for over the last 3 or 4 years, kind of calling out subscription scams and kind of pushing Apple on some of their app store policies and their search algorithm and their kind of fraud detection and things like that. So as I got into the weather space, it's really fun to build a weather app. And we have some really cool stuff coming for iOS 14 with widgets and complications on watchOS 7. So it's really fun building a weather app and building the weather app you want to use, because it's a daily driver, right? I mean, pretty much everybody uses a weather app on a daily basis. But what you find when you start doing deeper research into some of these categories, especially like weather, is that in these bigger, more competitive categories, there's a lot of shady stuff going on. And then on top of the shady stuff, you just have some really sophisticated players. So if you want to go build a wallpaper app, it's oh, wow, look at all these wallpaper apps making so much money. I should build a wallpaper app. I actually went down that road in March and it was spent probably 20 hours total researching and talking to people and stuff. And what I realized is, yeah, there's a bunch of crappy wallpaper apps that are making a ton of money, but they're not making a ton of money by building a great product. They're making and that's I want to build a great product. Yeah. And so it's just a different approach to things. And so in the weather space and the wallpaper space and a lot of these high traffic keyword spaces, you have a lot of very sophisticated players who have the money to spend on marketing. They have the teams to dial in monetization. They use, some of them use dark patterns in how they get people to sign up for subscriptions. And like, if you're just trying to build a great product and go into these competitive categories, I mean, you're bringing bringing a gun to a knife fight. Like, you're going to get outplayed at every turn. So I think, I mean, I can get more into like specifics of market research, but I think that probably helps more than some of the specifics, is just to understand that, like, what you think you see doing market research, like understanding which categories generate downloads and the apps that are making a lot of money. Like, you're not really doing market research until you like really understand why those apps are successful at the level they are. And I think so many developers make the mistake that thinking that they can just go into a competitive market with a better product and that people are going to find it and download it and Apple's going to feature. Apple's featured my apps, the Weather Up app, like 10 times. It was like app of the day. It was on the new apps we love. It's been all over the place on the App Store. Did that like make it successful? No. And like, you gotta, and I mean, so there's like layers of mistakes that I've made with Weather Up. Like, the monetization is not dialed in. Like, we need to do better with, communicating the value props. We need better value props. I mean, it's a competitive space. So like, people have really high expectations. So anyway, so in doing market research, it's like, there's just layers and layers and layers that you need to understand to build a successful product in a market as competitive as the App Store.
And I'm glad you brought that up, David. When developers do see like, hey, this is a crappy app, I can build a way better product on this. I think the most successful indie app developer stories that I've seen, that I've actually been able to work with, are people who come from the marketing background. Like, they have an affiliate marketing background. They know Facebook ads. They got all that dialed in, and then they're able to launch an app, and the product itself is good, right? Yeah. But the marketing is extremely solid, and that's how they've been really able to sustain that indie app lifestyle, and also just be like, like really generate millions of downloads and generate millions of dollars per year.
And a perfect example of this is actually one of my competitors that I have a ton of respect for, and that is Carrot Weather. So he went into the weather space not just with a great product, which it is a great product, but he went into it with a differentiated distribution edge. And this is something, so I'm probably going to be building a new app at some point this fall. And the developer I work with on that, he and I have been talking a lot about finding a differentiated distribution angle. So what Brian did with Carrot Weather, and funny enough, I kind of inspired Carrot Weather. I DM'd him. It's a kind of a funny story because he's been so successful with it. And I had a weather app at the same time. And I told him he should build because he had these a fitness app where it's like it like berated you if you didn't like work out hard enough and stuff like that. And I was like, dude, you need to do this for weather, because Funny or Die had come out with a weather app. Yeah. And I was like, dude, you're like Carrot brand would be perfect for weather. And he DM'd me like a month later. He's like, I'm actually building that. And I was like, cool, dude, do it. And so, but what this is like, he has a differentiated distribution edge. The cocky weather robot thing is unique. It's differentiated. It's interesting. People share it. People talk about it. People go to the App Store and search Carrot Weather because they want this like crazy, powerful, sassy weather app that like, but then, I mean, here's an important part. I say that product doesn't, earlier I was kind of insinuating product doesn't matter, but it absolutely matters, because he actually built a great product to back it up. So you have you need a differentiated distribution edge, but then you need a great product to back it up, because if you have a great product to back it up, you're going to get the renewals. Like, he's had subscribers for like four or 5 years now, like since very early on, because he built a differentiated product and he's continued iterating and adding new features and making it better and better. And he's just killing it. And I don't think he's ever done any paid marketing. He's not super high in like ASO, like searches for weather and stuff, because I watch that closely because I want to be higher in those rankings and stuff. But yeah, he's built a fantastic business. And I don't know exactly how much he's making, but estimates.
Now that
I'm at RevenueCat, and I asked my colleagues, I don't have like direct access to all the data or anything, but I'll ask my colleague, like, is this Sensor Tower thing right? Because like, I thought they were making like Sensor Tower is pretty off.
Really?
And yeah, and I've been able to double check it on my own apps and a lot of apps over the years. And theoretically, App Annie is better on the accuracy, but I mean, Sensor Tower can be like orders of magnitude off. So
just to close the
in the
loop on that,
ballpark, though, in the ballpark, he may be in that 30K a month range.
30K a month. All right. Hey, David, we got a lot of questions coming in. Yep. If you guys got questions, make sure you leave it in the comments below as well. The one thing I want to get into is you've gotten so much love from Apple. You've gotten so much press out of it too. And some of these questions are about like, how do you go about launching an app? So you want to walk us through some of your launch strategies?
Sure. So historically, we were just talking about like differentiated distribution edge. I think historically, I've really seen my ability to get press and get featured by Apple as that differentiator. Like, it's going to help me launch my app into a larger audience right off the bat. Even for me, with really great contacts, that has gotten harder and harder over the years. Like, big sites don't care as much about apps anymore. Like TechCrunch isn't writing about individual apps unless it's just something really interesting. But the way I've done that in the past is really just getting good at storytelling. So like, if you go back and search Weather Up and then Weather Atlas before that, it was in like TechCrunch or The Verge and big sites like that, because I found compelling stories to tell. So like when Weather Atlas, which is, we just rebranded it to Weather Up, but it launched as Weather Atlas. When we were releasing that in 2017, there were rumors of the taller iPhone 10. And so I positioned it as, and told the story around like, we were building this app for the future of devices. And it wasn't like I just was BSing. So that's Weather Up. If you search Weather Atlas TechCrunch, it'll show you the original launch in 2017. And so I positioned it as like, we're building this app for the future. And it really was true that, it says designed for iPhone 8 because we didn't know it was going to be called the iPhone 10. Everybody just thought the tall iPhone was going to be called the iPhone 8. But I told a true story. So I wasn't just like BSing or like writing a narrative. Like, we saw the rumors and we built an app around thinking about vertical space not being a constraint, and how would you design a weather app where vertical space is a lesser constraint? And so if you scroll up, you can see that like we built it where you can see the radar and the weather map and the data in the same pane, and it's a card interface where you can swipe it up and down. And so then we built this, and then we told the story like, hey, we built this for the iPhone 8, iPhone 10. And that's interesting, right? People want to like the rumors around the iPhone 8 and 10, around the iPhone 8 were really hot at the time. Everybody's talking about what's Apple going to do. Leaks were happening and everything. And so I found a compelling story that was true, because I don't like, you're not going to get very far like BSing a story and trying to pitch it. But like, if you find something that's going on and have a compelling story to tell around that, you can get that kind of attention. And then that second one, that other post that you were showing on TechCrunch was another story around just creating a really differentiated feature. So we launched calendar events in your weather feed. And so that was like a really unique feature that hadn't been seen. And so when you have a daily driver weather app, and you introduce something that's really unique, like it can get attention because you're telling a unique story that people actually care about because they care about weather apps. So my advice would be to look for those interesting stories that you can tell, and then find ways to pitch those stories around the audience and why they should care. So like, if you're pitching Apple, why does Apple care? Apple cares about pushing and you've talked about this a ton, but I'll just reiterate, but Apple cares about like the new widgets in iOS 14. They're going to care about that. They cared about AR and pitched and featured a lot of apps around AR. They care about, adopting all these technologies that they're pushing. They care about selling their devices. They care about making money via subscription. So like, being a subscription app, I think does give an edge right now for getting featured by Apple. So it's like you think about your audience, and if you're pitching Apple, like tell them a story they care about. If you're pitching the press, tell them a story they care about. What do they care about? They care about people reading their story. They care about their audience feeling like TechCrunch is valuable and that they're not just posting random stories about random crap, but actually posting stories that people care about. So so again, like telling a story about this rumored tall iPhone was a compelling, interesting thing that the writer thought their audience would want to read about. So, and then when you're telling a story to customers, like you need to understand in your screenshots, like what story you're telling those customers, where are they coming from, and all that kind of stuff. So I think that the edge there is really storytelling. And then I will say I've been talking to a lot of developers lately about how getting in TechCrunch and The Verge and sites like that is probably actually not the best. Like we didn't actually do very well from those stories. Like people, it's just a drive-by thing. It's a huge audience, but like you just don't have, just people see it and they're like, oh, another weather app, whatever. Where I've seen developers be a lot more successful, a buddy of mine runs an RV app, and he got a ton of downloads one day. He's like, dude, how do I find out where these downloads came from? Like they just came out of nowhere. And turns out it was a small YouTube channel, or I don't know exactly how many, but it was a relatively small YouTube channel that you wouldn't think could drive the kind of traffic. Like he probably got more downloads than I got from a TechCrunch story, but it's because it was a very focused audience on YouTube that cared deeply about RVs. And this guy got on and talked about this RV app organically because they liked it. And so it drove a ton of downloads. So what I've been talking to, especially like more like indie folks who aren't, funded and don't have a PR rep who can go pitch to TechCrunch and The Verge, and whether or not that's even valuable for a lot of startups is debatable. But go after the smaller niche sites and audiences that really care about your product, and then tell them the story that they're going to care about. And so a perfect example of this, and we could, I can get you the link and we can put it in show notes or whatever, but Darius Mora works at Reflectly, and he did an AMA with I run a private forum for subscription app developers, and he did an AMA on there and then recorded the answers as a YouTube video. So the answers are public. But he's been doing some really fascinating influencer marketing on for Reflectly, but he's not going after the million followers and those kind of influencers. He's going after micro influencers and then paying them to promote the product and then using those videos as ads. And so whether or not you can pay the micro influencers or whatever, if you can focus on these niche audiences that really care and tell them the right story, I think that's better than these days. It's probably better than trying to go after a TechCrunch or something like that.
So true, Trevi. And Darius has done a YouTube live stream and podcast episode with us talking about that similar strategy.
Nice.
So just go back into the archives just a few weeks ago when we first started the YouTube live stuff. Darius was one of our first guests to come on and share that story. But phenomenal story. And I agree with you. I have a friend of mine who has a weather app as well, where he just curses like, it's going to be effing hot today. And he said, look, I've been on these big sites too, but the best downloads came from a little blogger, like a college blogger, just talking about the app, super niche. And he got way more downloads that way. So the more targeted the audience, the better that you can get it. So it could be YouTube, it could be Instagram, it could be a blog, anything. But it's cool to be on these TechCrunch sites, but again, the traction might not be there. All right.
And it's really hard. That's the thing. It's like, I can't sit here and say
right?
Do this, this, and this, and you're going to be on TechCrunch. It's it's like, you gotta, it's not advice that's replicable. Yeah. Well, but again, what are you jealous of, right?
I pitched Sarah a bunch of times and she's never say yes. It's one of these things where it's like, it's just nice to have type of thing. It's like a trophy. It's like, all my trophies over there, they're sitting there, but it's kind of like nobody really cares about it.
But it's a trophy. It's not money in the bank.
Exactly.
And that's where a lot of a PR firm that's charging, $10,000 a placement or something I maybe got hundreds of dollars worth of value out of that story. It's not a $10,000 value. So yeah.
Cool. All right, let's get into some of the questions. I want to say hi to Fawn, who's in Vietnam. Dude, it must be late over there. So thanks for staying up, Fawn. All right, and we got some questions from some people. All right, all right, I love this question from Joe because you've experienced selling multiple apps too. When you're building an app, do you have a focus on eventually selling it, or you build it to like sort of dominate a field? What does that look like? What's your approach when you're building the app?
I mean, I've always really just focused on building good product. Like, I mean, if you sell, you're going to sell because it's if you're able to make money and find a good buyer and make it worth selling, it has to be a good business. So what you need to focus on is just building a good business. Like, I mean, people are buying apps that aren't dominating a category if they're a good business. So if, like I may eventually sell my Weather Up app, but what I know it's going to take to make it an interesting acquisition and make it worth me selling is for it to be a good business. So if I have 20,000 subscribers and my churn rate is relatively low because it's a great product, well, that's a great acquisition target. So the kinds of things that you have to do to be a good acquisition target is have some sort of sustainable, repeatable marketing advantage. Like what we've been talking about, it's like all the things that play into building a good product or business is what plays into making it a good flip. So if you have a repeatable way to go out and buy users, and you're buying users for $1, have an LTV of 2, then that's a great acquisition target. But if you're spending $2 a user, and I mean, so most acquirers are going to look at your net profit. So if you're spending a ton of money on marketing and you have really high top line revenue, but you're not actually making any money on that, you're going to get pennies. But if you've got like good organics coming in, so like one of the apps I sold was a mirror. It's called Mirror. It was a total fluke. I didn't build it to flip. I just built it for fun because the front-facing camera was coming out on the iPhone 4. This is like ages ago. I think it's 2010. And the app just slowly built up and then got to the point where it's doing 4,000 or 5,000 organics a day from search. People go search Mirror, and then it was the top result for that. And again, it's like there's not like it's really hard to accomplish that, especially on a keyword like mirror that has a ton of competition. But it built up over time, and then I did really great working on monetization with ads and interstitials and things like that. And then once it was actually a really good business, making reliable money without me spending much time, then it was like a really interesting acquisition target. So yeah, I think that's probably a pretty good overview. Like just build a good business, and that's that'll make it flippable.
I like it. And on the topic of app ideas and building an app, Vigneck says, do you validate an app idea before you pick and start working on it?
Absolutely.
How do you do
that's
that?
what I was talking about with the wallpaper research. So, I mean, I have not. When I say I validated app ideas, I mean, I have not like done some of the kind of like, which I probably should, but like building a landing site and driving traffic to it and seeing how people respond. I think like there's a lot of strategies like that are smart, and I probably should do more of it. But I take a much broader approach. Like if I'm going to build an app, I want to care about it and build something that I think is meaningful. And so that's where I do the much deeper, like looking for that differentiated marketing edge, the differentiated product features, the business model that makes sense. So I approach it more from those strategic angles than like these, because man, I mean, it's the same thing with A/B testing. It's like you can A/B test yourself into a terrible product. You can go try and validate ideas by pushing traffic to this landing page and try and see if people are interested or whatever. But at the end of the day, like it's a really skewed audience that is coming to the landing page because of the way you advertise. You have to spend a lot of money to get enough traffic to really get like statistically significant information. So, I mean, if anything, I think there are kind of more direct ways to do that. So so what I would recommend, and this is actually something that I will be more interested in doing in the future, is take an app concept and just do user interviews. Just there's a great tool called UserLook. I think it's like userlook.co or something like that. And they do really affordable one-on-one usability sessions. So like, build a mock-up, pay for UserLook, some sessions, watch people, talk to people. And I think you'll probably get better insights from that sort of thing than you do like some of these kind of hacky, send traffic to a landing page and trick them into thinking they're downloading an app and see how many people tap the button. Like, I don't know. I've never been a fan of those kind of tactics. Yeah. What do you think, Steve? I mean, you've probably, done more app validation kind of stuff.
Well, I agree with you. I think the user look is very important, because one of the things I really hate, David, is when people are like, hey, Steve, check out my app. And then they're like literally showing me how to do everything, when they could get so much feedback by just handing me the phone and being like, seeing what I do with it. And I think going through Sensor Tower, and while the data might be accurate or not accurate, it gives you a sense of just figuring out, like, are there other types of apps generating top grossing? Like, I did this app audit with intermittent fasting apps, and I've been intermittent fasting for about 2+ years now. But I was like, oh my God, there's like 5 or 6 apps in the top grossing, like the top 200, that are making over $100,000 through Sensor Tower. Now, granted, the data might be somewhat accurate or not accurate, but it's like, okay, there's enough there that says, all right, like this is a pretty simple app idea that I could probably build and generate some money. Obviously, do the marketing research and how they're marketing, but at the same time, like, there's a market for this. So doing enough of that,
and that's where I say you have to, but that's where you have to be really careful though. Again, it's like, well, how, like, I know the players in that space. Like, I actually use Xero. Huge fan of them. They're actually a RevenueCat customer as well. But understanding what's going on in that market, I won't speak to fasting, because I know the Xero folks and they use RevenueCat and stuff, but going back to my example, like wallpapers, it's like you can validate that category and see that people are making a lot of money. But if you want to go into that space, don't just leave it at, oh, there's like 5 wallpaper apps making money in this space. You really need to analyze, like, why is this wallpaper app making a crazy amount of money? And you go download the app, you go through their onboarding, you see they're charging like $5 a week on subscriptions. And then you go to Facebook's ad tool and like try and look at like what kind of ads they're running, like how are they acquiring these users, what's their marketing spend? Because another thing a lot of people don't realize is like, okay, sure, like these fasting apps might be making hundreds of thousands of dollars a month, but you don't know if they're spending $500,000 a month to generate $300,000 a month of income. So it looks like this great opportunity, but you don't know how they're driving users. You don't know what their conversion funnel looks like. And so the more you can understand the real reasons that those niches are being successful and making that kind of money, informs whether you want to go into that space or not.
Yep, totally true.
And then how to create a differentiated experience in that space.
I love it. And I love what you brought about Carrot. I know I interviewed, you said Brian, I forgot the name, but when it was Carrot to Do, like I had him on and we were talking all about Carrot there. So he built a brand. And I think that differentiation, like what is going to make your fasting app different from all the different fasting apps? It just can't be a timer. Like I think people fall into that trap and be like, that's easy. Like I can just build a timer, but you got to make it a little bit different. And but
see, even if it's a different product, that's the trap I fell in with my Weather Up app.
Yeah,
it's like Weather Up is a differentiated app. Like it's a map first app, and a lot of people care about weather maps. And we combine that in a really unique way with cards, where like you get to look at the forecast and also get a peek at the weather app. So like we have a differentiated product. We have the calendar stuff that's like very differentiated. But what you need more than a differentiated product, you need both, but you need a differentiated marketing edge. Like for Carrot Weather, it's the like sassy weather robot, and I lovingly call it a gimmick, and I've said this to Brian about Carrot Weather, like, but it's like gimmick is kind of has a negative connotation, but to me, I don't see it as just a negative. Like if you can build a great gimmick to bring people in, that's great. So, but you got to find a way, like, not just how is your product going to stand out, but how are you going to get attention for your product? Like, how can you stand out marketing and distribution wise? And that these days is in a lot of ways more important than that differentiated product. Because like a lot of these fasting apps are very similar. Like they're not that differentiated from each other, but what like some of the bigger ones are really good at is marketing and dialing in the conversion funnels and stuff like that.
So true. So true. So much more important. That's why I've been trying to, like, in the beginning of the days, podcast was all about growth. Now I'm like trying to think about obviously growth, but at the same time, like monetization, retention, what are those tactics? TNS, he's from Facebook. So cool. Like we're getting some Facebook audience as well. We're live on Facebook, but what traffic sources are working well for you, David?
I mean, really, I've done very little paid marketing over the years. So it's the success I have had, like with my Mirror app and with Gas Cubby back in the day, with Launch Center Pro, it's all organic. So like Launch Center Pro did really well with word of mouth, and Launch Center Pro got a lot of consistent buzz that kept going. Like it wasn't like I had a big launch and got a bunch of attention and then it just died down. It was like people would talk about Launch Center Pro, and like videos would pop up on YouTube about people describing how they use it and stuff like that. That's like really hard to generate, but again, it gets back to like product differentiation, marketing differentiation. It's like Launch Center Pro was a very unique product, and it was a very useful, productive product. And that was, in a way, its distribution edge is that it was so unique and helped people that people would talk about it, would blog about it, funny enough, like it was complex enough that people would do a podcast about it, do these blog posts, do YouTube explainer videos, because it wasn't so simple to just download it and like make it happen. And so yeah. And then like my Mirror app, it was ASO, like I was able to latch on to the Mirror keyword and just ride that wave. My weather app has been primarily like getting featured and press, but it's not doing well. So it's like you can't rely on those kind of sources of traffic. Like as much as you think like, oh, if I get featured by Apple, like that solves all my problems, it doesn't. Like you need to find like consistent ways to get attention for your app. And if you can't, it's never going to go anywhere.
It's only those that have been featured multiple times. We've helped multiple clients get featured at 34 different clients. And I tell every client, like in the beginning, it was very huge. And I tell them now, it's like, they come to us thinking like, hey, can you get featured? But I'm like, it's not going to make or break your business. Like it's a nice little trophy. Again, it's great. It's going to drive some downloads, but at the same time, like you'll be fine if you don't get featured as well. So, all right. Speaking on the ASO topics, Flutterist asks, I know Flutterist, you asked about revenue. I'd rather not talk about that revenue stuff. It's just personal stuff. But what are some ASO tricks for you, David? What are some strategies that are working for you?
That's a better question for you, Steve. Just generally, I'll say, man, and we talked about I was at your session at the app promotion, or what was the event in San Francisco in February?
This past one?
Yeah. You did a panel with ASO tactics.
Oh yeah. It was Mobile Growth
Summit. Yeah. In San Francisco.
I didn't even know you were there.
In the audience. We talked. No. I asked a question or responded.
Okay.
Yeah. We were talking about Black Hat ASO tactics.
Okay. Yeah.
Like really awkwardly, I brought up the Black Hat stuff, but so I think what I was going to say though is just like ASO is brutally hard these days. It's like the Black Hat stuff that used to work really well does not work. The gray hat stuff and like all the techniques that you read about in blogs and stuff, like if you do everything perfectly, maybe that like gets you some traction. But I mean, honestly, ASO is only as good as like the traffic that you can bring to it. So like, again, it's like if you don't have a consistent way to get people to see your app, you're not going to gain traction in search terms. Like it's just nearly impossible. So if you're not getting word of mouth, if you're not getting press, if you're not getting featured, if you're not paying for ads, if you're not like whatever your strategy is to get attention for your app, like that's primary. And then ASO is fed by that. Like you're not going to get search rankings. You're not going to get like, and I mean, like you still need to optimize your conversions. You need to like work on your screenshots. You need to make sure your icon's great. You need to do subtitles. Like you need to do all of that. But my point, my kind of broader point is like the tactics are all there. Like there's a million blog posts and everything like that. But what I think a lot of people fail to see is that it starts with getting attention. So like, it doesn't matter, like if you dial everything in perfectly, like that's not going to get you downloads. Like you got to get the downloads for all these techniques to matter.
Yep, agree. And then Wojciech asked, when you were talking about your launch strategy, why don't you do any paid marketing?
I mean, I've been a bootstrap indie developer for 12 years. Like I've, it's just getting to launch is a struggle sometimes, like financially. And so, and paid marketing is really hard to do well. Like these days, it seems like, oh, if I can just like, get Facebook's algorithm to dial things in, then I'm set. Like, I can spend $10,000 and make 20. But even if you can spend 10,000 and make 20, like you got to cash flow that, right? So like you spend 10,000 on a launch, and theoretically you're going to make 20, but when does ROAS happen? Like it could be 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, 120 days. So how are you going to cash flow that paid advertising until the 120 days hit? You can go take out a loan from a bank. You're going to like dip into retirement savings, like, and so, I mean, if you're a funded company, if you have investors or whatever, like absolutely like reinforce the rest of your launch strategy with paid marketing. But if you're bootstrapping and you've got like $500 to spend, like, you might be better off again, like just doing simple things like the micro influencers and like finding that, I mean, the term is so passe, but the guerrilla marketing, it's like, don't go to Facebook and spend $500. It's just such a low return on investment. If you have $10, $20, $30,000, absolutely. But if you just have 500, like you got to find ways to stretch that 500. And so as an indie developer, who hasn't had 10,000 to just blow on an app launch, I've been really careful to use other stuff, to use press and, try and get featured by Apple and do other stuff like that.
I like it. Hey, David, I don't know if you want to do this, and I can set up my phone to get one of these apps, but Magpie Apps said it'd be useful if David could dissect the subscription paywall, maybe some of the learnings that you've gotten through RevenueCat as well, the paywall UI of one or two of your more popular apps, and explain what's working and what's not. What do you think?
I was trying to think. I mean, I actually just watched your fasting app thing last couple of weeks when you like dissected, what was it, Fastic?
Yeah.
Talked about Zero and all that stuff. I feel like you've got a ton of content around this, but I mean, if
I like it. I'll take the plug.
Yeah, I don't know. I just feel like so much has been written and spilled on this. I mean, maybe instead of like doing a dissection, let's just talk like super high level. I did do a deep dive, and so this may be really interesting and instructive to some people. I in Subclub, that subscription app forum that I run, I recently took a look at Tinder, in which I'm a happily married 41-year-old man with 4 kids. So I was like, told my wife, I was like, look, I'm going to download this Tinder app. You have to like create a profile and stuff. I'm going to create a fake profile, but like if you see Tinder, don't worry about our marriage. Like things are cool. But anyway, so it was.
I created a real profile. Okay, I just told my wife, hey, it's business. It's my job.
Yeah, well, at least it wasn't like Ashley Madison or something. Then I think it'd be even harder. I guess that probably doesn't even exist anymore. But anyway, so Tinder is really fascinating, and it is. I mean, the thing you have to think about with understanding paywalls is that you can look at best practices. You can study Tinder. You can study Calm. You can study Headspace. You can like make all these assumptions based on all these different things. But again, it's like what we were talking about with market research is that there's certain like business assumptions and unique reasons why things work for different apps. So Calm has an incredibly simple paywall. It's like a list of benefits and a button. I don't think that's actually a great strategy for a lot of apps because Calm, people coming to Calm have a different mindset, are prepped differently. Calm already has free content, so they're probably coming in with having experienced some content for free. They may be seeing the paywall after tapping, like, I think LeBron James and Matthew McConaughey and like all these stars have been doing content for them. So like if you tap on meditation with LeBron James button and the paywall comes up, that is really different than if you're in My Weather app and you tap on like a advanced forecast thing and you get the paywall. So as important as I think it is to look at what is successful in other apps, I think it's even more important to kind of study the context around why those things are successful and try and piece apart why that company is using that specific paywall and try and think about why it makes sense for them, but may or may not make sense for you. So Tinder, like, incredible business, right? I mean, they make a ton of money. They're a dating app. So like somebody who hits the paywall on Tinder, and if you go like do what you and I did and create these fake profiles, you see how perfectly aligned the incentives are for when they hit the paywall. So like there's like, I forget, there's like some special like see your top matches. And you see like 5 top matches and it's like, oh, like, these are people who actually look like good matches. And then it only gives you 5, but then it's like grayed out like 5 more. And you tap on the next one. It's like you hit the paywall. And so it's like understanding the mindset of like where, and this is so important for your own paywall design. It's like you want a crafted experience around that. Like you want them to hit the paywall like yearning for more. And that's again like what Tinder does so incredibly well. It's like they have they're essentially selling sex, right? So it's like they've got an incredible product they're selling, and then they find those really strategic moments to hit the paywall. And then some of the things that Tinder also does incredibly well is they have the gold subscription and then they have the plus subscription. And so when you hit a feature that requires plus, they only show you the plus subscription. You don't see like plus compared to gold. You don't see anything else. You just see they're selling you plus. Like you tapped on a feature that requires plus, here's our plus subscription. And they do have 3 options. They have, and this is a little like kind of black hat thing, but like there's a 6-month subscription, a 1-year subscription, and a 1-month subscription. The prices make it really hard to do comparisons. So like the annual is like $69, the 6-month is like 32, or it like, I forget the exact numbers, but it makes it really hard in your head to do the math of like how, if the 6-month is better than, like how much better is the 6-month than or how much better is the annual than the 6-month, and how does that compare to the monthly? It's like they pick numbers that aren't like evenly divisible so that it makes it confusing to do that analysis in your head. But anyways, that's kind of an aside. But they just do an incredible job of showing you exactly what you care about. And then another thing they do really well is on top of the subscriptions, they actually monetize via consumable in-app purchases. So if you want to boost your profile to get more views and more likes and more matches or whatever, I forget all the, like what your accomplishing in there because I never like actually like started a conversation or went on a date or anything. So, but you tap on the button to like boost your profile, and it's a consumable. And so it's really fascinating how Tinder is able to capture value from the plus subscribers, and then capture value from the gold subscribers, and then capture value on top of the gold subscribers with these consumables. And so that's one thing I think that that's what freemium, free to play games do really well, is that they allow people to spend more money. And that's one thing I don't think, subscriptions are great as recurring revenue, but they're not great at capturing more of the value that you're creating. Because some people are just going to value your app more than others, but if they're all paying the same price, like you're not capturing that additional value that you're creating for those diehard users. And so that's just another thing to think about. Is like, what are ways that I can do that? But then again, you got to look at successful apps like Tinder, that they're not showing you 10 different subscription options in a single page. They're really carefully stratifying those purchase experiences, and they're doing so to capture as much value as they can and not kind of have the ceiling on what people can pay.
Yeah, I like it. All right, let's see. We got about 12 minutes left. I want to get into some of the app audits as well. I know there was a question in here by, I forget who, but I think it was Dave or Mark. But anyways, like Mark, if you want some advice on how to prove, there is a audit that we do. So it's just fill out that form at masters.com/audit. You can get all that. And the audits that we have, I'll try to get through a few while we have David, is this one, David, because he wants some more onboarding experience. And I think you, as someone who's really into products, we can walk through that. And I have the app ready to go. But just rapid fire questions we got similar questions from Sunil and then Ramata that says, what would be your advice if you want organic downloads in a short period of time? This is specifically for games. And Sunil says it's the same thing. How do we get started and drive enough downloads in a short period of time? And I think, just some rapid fire questions, and then we'll get into the app audit as well. What do you think, David?
I mean, organics are really tough to get. Like, again, I mean, I think it just goes back to a lot of stuff we're talking about. Like, find a niche that you think you can get attention with. And there are still keywords on the App Store that you can find and target. Like, if there are only 4 or 5 apps that do some specific thing, like if you can find something an accountant needs, that they're actually going to go to the App Store and search like accounting tool helping or whatever. Like there are still those niches where you can find keywords that are going to organically drive downloads. But if you're in any like even reasonably competitive keyword, you got to look outside of search organics. And so you just got to find a niche where you can get attention in other ways. Like you got to think about the micro influencers and bloggers, and like you got to find a way to get the attention to drive those. So I mean, that's organics, like word of mouth and things like that, are fed by getting that attention. So yeah, you got to start with getting the attention, and then and think about, and you got to think about too, like the organic funnel, like why is somebody going to hear about your app? And if they hear about it, why are they going to care enough to go download it and tell those stories? Like have an app that has a story to tell so that people will tell it.
I like it. And I agree with everything you said. And I think what we've kind of broken down through this entire interview has been, look, find the right target audience. It doesn't have to be the biggest. And you have to start that early on. I think too many times they're like, I'm ready to launch. What do I do? I'm like, when are you launching? Oh, tomorrow. I'm like, what? These are things that you should be doing a month in advance and finding these targeted users. Yeah.
And you shouldn't even be, I mean, honestly, like if you're trying to make money, if you're a hobbyist and just want to release an app, whatever, just build an app and do it. If you're actually wanting to make any money, like you need to understand your marketing plan before you build the app. Because if you build an app that is not marketable, like you're not going anywhere. So start with the marketing, then build the app.
I like it. All right. Jonathan asks, I have an app that is paid and I have a build ready to go with subscriptions using RevenueCat. So congrats, Jonathan. I am hesitant to make the leap. Is it better to use subscriptions? Any tips on validation? So I guess he's very hesitant to go to a subscription type of model.
Yeah. So I actually have a great blog post on this. And then there's a specific quote, and if you'll bear with me to actually just read it, because it's really good. Ben Baharin runs a strategic analysis firm for like big tech companies, and so they're constantly doing consumer research. And so he did research around subscription apps about 2 years ago, and I helped kind of formulate some of the questions. So normally you would need to pay like, I think they charge $5,000-$10,000 for some of these, charge Apple and these big companies to like get these reports. So he allowed me to share kind of the summary from one of these subscription reports on this blog. So it's if you search RevenueCat True Fans, you'll see this quote. But I just want to read it because I think this just like hits a nail on the head of like monetizing via subscriptions. So here's a quote. What came out loud and clear from respondents was their love-hate relationship with subscriptions. Countless respondents preferred to pay up front for an app rather than subscribe to it. Most importantly, the comments emphasized that if they had to pay a subscription, they wanted to feel like they were getting their money's worth and that the app would be updated and have new compelling features added regularly. This theme drew me to the conclusion that for a developer to charge a subscription, they must be deeply invested in its continual innovation. If they can achieve this, then the consumer also considers the subscription to this app an investment and one they feel worth the continued price they pay. So that's like a mouthful, but I think that should help. Like consumers don't always love subscriptions. Like we need to acknowledge that, right? Like at RevenueCat, we know that like not every app is a good subscription app. We know that like consumers don't want to subscribe to 30 apps. But what's happening and what's really interesting in this subscription app market is that the subscription app monetization model allows developers to build better apps because they can align themselves more with the value that the subscribers are getting out of the app and build that value. And so I'll kind of take a little liberty with that quote and say that I don't think consumers only expect innovative new features. Like they don't necessarily care as much about the app being continually updated as much as they care about the value that they derive being continuous. So like if you're launching like a one-off app that allows somebody to like flip a video, like that's actually something I went searching for an app for recently. And so it's not delivering me value over time. Like every once in a while I need to flip a video, every once in a while I need to like scan a document, every once in a while I need to whatever. So I don't value that tool enough, and I don't derive that value over time to warrant a subscription. On the other hand, if you have an app like a weather app that you open every day, you get that value out of it on a continual basis. Fasting app we were talking about, like fasting, fitness, meditation, like those apps are very clearly like delivering that value over time. I subscribe to MyFitnessPal. Like the improvements they made to the app annoyed me because they messed with some stuff, and like I hate the app, but like I loved being able to track my calories, and their tools for like finding the food and quickly being able to log and see your macros. Like they had just enough like super valuable features that I was willing to pay $60 a year for that. And I used that app consistently over time. So like, it doesn't just matter that you continually innovate, but it matters that you're delivering value over time. So if your app is not doing that, don't do subscriptions. Like do it and a one-time in-app purchase. Find a different way to monetize it. So I hope, I think that's hopefully enough of an answer. But if your app does deliver that value over time, focus on that value and continue building that value and continue finding innovative ways to deliver that value, whether it's new features or different marketing angle or different tools for them to help them better use the app. Like retention is huge in subscription apps. Like, so if you can build that tool, but then also help them use it over time, then you're going to get the better retention and people are going to see more value to actually subscribe and stuff. And man, there's like so many rabbit holes we could go down on that too. That wasn't a quick fire answer, but yeah, I think a lot about this, and I talk to a lot of developers about this. I do one-on-one sessions kind of like this for RevenueCat customers, and so yeah, I talk about this a lot with fellow developers.
Jonathan, reach out to David. I mean, if you're a paying customer, definitely reach out.
I have office hours. Yeah,
that's great. Abraham asked, theoretically, how far can you go with marketing and using only ASO? You know, it depends on the app, Abraham. Like I've talked to a lot of different people who have started early on in the app space, and so they were able to leverage ASO. I think if you're just starting now, it's going to be very difficult. You're probably going to have to spend some marketing on ASO. Keyword optimization is obviously important, but building those backlinks on the Play Store, it can get you so far. But if you're trying to do it all for free, it might be a little bit more difficult. I think in the early days, it was a lot easier. I think just trying to launch now, it'd be a little bit harder without really driving paid marketing with ASO. All right, David, feel free to jump in, and then I'm going to try to get through some of these really quick. All right. Oh, Diane, what's up, Diane? Hey, Steve and David, Diane here from Home Inventory. Thanks for the thoughts and subscriptions. Very helpful. Okay, great. Thank you. And then Joe says, how low is too low for the price of a subscription? That's a great question.
I don't think there is any too low of a price. It's all value related, right? So fitness apps, there's fitness apps that charge 10, 15 bucks a month and like hundreds of dollars a year. What's really interesting is if you think about how consumers are how their expectations are set. If you're spending $60 a month for a gym membership, $60 a session for a personal trainer, you're buying your gym equipment, you've got a Peloton, like everything in like that space is crazy expensive. So and people care deeply about like getting fit and increasing muscle mass or different things. So if you're building a tool that like actually adds value in that space, then like you need to price it relative to that value you're creating. For me, like my weather app, that's kind of a struggle. Like I see some weather apps that charge a lot of money, and this goes back to like the market analysis thing. Like I think some of them are using more kind of like dark patterns to get people to subscribe at those higher prices. So I question whether my market really values the differentiated weather experience high enough to charge 10 bucks a month, or some of these weather apps charging $5 a week. Like, I don't think people value weather apps at $200+ a year. So, you know, my weather app is like, I think right now it's like $199 a month, and we probably are going to bump that up to $3 a month or like $20 a year or something like that. But, there's ways to price test. There's like market research stuff you can do around like price sensitivity and stuff like that. But ultimately, I think, aligning yourself with kind of the consumer value perception. So again, it's like you want to build something that's super valuable. But if you're in a space that's highly competitive, where other apps are providing differentiated experiences, like the weather category, where you can't differentiate enough to command that higher price. So it's kind of a combination of the value you're delivering, the context that consumers will view your pricing at, competitors, all those kind of things. But I mean, I don't like 99 cents a month. There is a point at which something feels cheap. And so there's a certain perception of like, oh, wow, like somebody's paying $5 a month for a weather app. Like this must be a really good weather app. So you also got to kind of play those like kind of pricing psychology things, is that, 99 cents a month, while it may be more like fair, it might kind of say something about your product that you're pricing it so cheap. But on the other hand, it's like if you're not delivering, $5 a month worth of value, or it's not a niche that like values what you do enough, I mean, honestly, you probably just want to build a different app or like build more value. So maybe that's the answer. It's like, I mean, if you're just not delivering enough value, sure, like keep a lower price, but like your goal should be to be delivering enough value to charge more.
Hey, Dave, let me ask you this. And there's a question in here that is sort of along these lines. But what we've found and what I've tried to promote to, or try to advocate to developers is try to push that yearly option, right? Like, because what we found is that lifetime value goes up. Obviously, your revenues per download goes up because the average order size goes up. Have you guys, and what we've seen from clients is that when people sign up for the monthly, they're actually likely to cancel. There's a little inclination that they're more likely to cancel. They're just trying out the app. And obviously your lifetime value for that monthly user is going to be a lot lower from what we found versus the yearly. So do you agree with that data? And obviously you have a lot of data with RevenueCat as well.
Yeah, I think, so we actually, this is actually personally quite exciting. We just hired a data scientist at RevenueCat, and he is a very popular guy at RevenueCat now because we, like everybody else on the team, is just really excited to get those insights. So, so what's really fun, and you and I were kind of talking about this before the podcast, is like being developer advocate at RevenueCat part-time and running my business part-time. I get the best of both worlds. I get to have my cake and eat it too. So on the RevenueCat team, like we're just building super cool stuff for subscription apps. And then I get to use them as a developer. And then, we just hired a data scientist. So I'm super excited about like the data projects we're going to do. But guess what? Now my like simple little subscription apps as an indie developer have a data scientist who's going to like be working on our dashboard to like provide the kind of insights I've always wanted to get on my subscriptions, but don't have the resources to go pay a data scientist to come analyze my data. So anyways, to answer the question, it just kind of brought up, this is something like I actually just emailed the team yesterday, like, when do I get to sit down with the data scientist and dig through this data? So it's like really top of mind because I'm like super excited, as you can probably tell. So that's actually something that we're probably going to be doing blog posts about in the not too distant future, and potentially even like doing some kind of benchmarking in our dashboard or something like that, where, trying to help people understand, what those conversion rates look like, how people, what retention rates are like on a monthly versus an annual subscription and stuff like that. But I think to answer the question more specifically, I think it depends a lot on the app, right? Because it's like Netflix doesn't offer annual subscriptions. They offer monthly. They don't offer lifetime. But they're very confident in the value they deliver that people just stay subscribed. So if you have an app that is super valuable, that people are, staying using it for years, then pushing people to a higher monthly, because for some people it just fits their budget. Like, oh, I can just pay $5 a month for that, and that's easy. Like $60 is a stretch to. So if you've got the great app that has retention, a monthly subscription can actually make you more money and make your customer more happy, because they can just budget that. It feels like pennies a month. I just, don't get one Starbucks a month and I can pay for this app. Whereas like 60 a year can be like a big ask, but $5 a month is more than is 60 a year, but feels cheaper. So yes, pushing people to the annual can increase the lifetime value, especially if the people are just going to cancel anyway. So you just look at your stats. Like if you are seeing a lot of cancellations on the monthly, then remove it as an option, or make it much more expensive as a price anchoring to push people to the annual.
Yeah, I love it. Cool.
But I mean, ultimately, you would want to be able to charge monthly, because you would want people to be getting enough value out of your app. And then that goes back to all the product stuff. Like, what are you doing product wise to like actually deliver the value? What are you doing to like keep them coming back to the app and getting that value? Like, is this a product that is valuable to consumers, and all that?
I love it. All right, just a quick fire question here. Damn Comedy says, would you recommend using that? I do say if you're running on iOS, try Apple Search Ads Basic. You can run advanced, and there's ways to do the advanced that is sort of mimics the basic. So that's one thing that I would give, because you can say, look, Apple, I only want to pay a cost per install of this much to get those early users and that early feedback. But I'm going to put together something where we're going to talk all about like side hustle tactics, that if you're indie, here's some tactics that you can use for a couple $100s to really stretch out your marketing. So that's what I would say.
That's the same advice I give too, is that Apple search ads are generally the most cost effective. And one of the reasons they are is because of user intent. And this is something to think about in all of your marketing efforts. It's like, what intent are you generating with your marketing? So somebody who comes to the App Store and searches weather, they're not just like browsing Facebook and happen to see an ad for weather. They're actually going to the App Store and saying, like, I care enough to spend a few minutes of my time to search weather because I want a better weather app. And so those Apple search ads users are going to deliver a higher LTV. And a lot of people make this mistake too, is that they see a really high LTV and think that that's scalable. So like if you get amazing return on ad spend from Apple search ads, like, oh, well, I can just spend that much on Facebook and I'm generating this high LTV, so I can go spend, $2 a user on Facebook. But you got to understand why you're getting that LTV. And Apple search ads, especially on a budget, is just incredible because it's delivering those really highly targeted, highly incentivized users who are likely to have some of your highest LTV if you can get them into the app and onboarded and starting your free trial and everything.
All right, David, we still got some questions. I want to be respectful of your time as well. Maybe we'll end with this and then we'll give a plug. Yeah. The Magpie says, all right, David, and this is very timely with iOS 14. What do you think of the IDFA related updates on iOS 14 and how is it going to affect monetization?
Man, so I have like 10 pages of notes for a blog post that was supposed to go out 3 weeks ago. It is a disaster. It is a mess. What do I think? This is probably the summary that I'm going to give in this post that will hopefully go out next week. I'm concerned that this is going to drive a bit of a kind of recession on the App Store, and I don't think Apple fully anticipated how deeply this could potentially impact the market. So many of the tools that have been built up over the last 5 or 10 years, or really more 5 years since Apple released the IDFA with iOS 6, they're built around these highly targeted ads, and they're built around being able to measure the return on those ads. And so Apple just threw a huge monkey wrench in the ability to target the ads and an ability to measure the return on those ads. I'm hopeful that Apple will make some adjustments over time. But, Facebook and Google, for all the, negative aspects on privacy and stuff, I would argue, and I don't know if I'll phrase it this way in the blog post, but like, they have increased the GDP of the App Store. Like, Stripe talks about increasing the GDP of the internet. Like Facebook and Google, through creating incredibly efficient ways to acquire users, have increased spending on apps. Like, there would be less spending on the App Store if it weren't for the efficiency through which developers can acquire users. So I'm concerned that a reduction in that efficiency is going to reduce spending on apps. Like, developers are going to have to adjust their marketing budgets and adjust their spend. That spend is likely going to become less efficient and less targeted. I kind of think this potentially hurts like smaller developers, kind of small mid-tier developers a little more. The big developers can afford to purchase new tools, bring things in-house, adjust. They can afford for efficiency to not be quite what it has been in the past. But some of the like mid-tier apps that are spending $50,000, $60,000 a month on ads rely on that kind of efficiency, and certain products just rely on the targeting. It's like, if you're not able to do those super highly targeted ads and then measure the return on those and optimize them, like, I think some products just cease to grow and potentially retract. Now, from a privacy standpoint, I think it's fantastic. Like I've had IDFA I've had limit ad tracking turned on for years because I don't want these shady data brokers hoovering up all of my data and all my app usage and my location and all that kind of stuff. So I think it's a boon for privacy, and I think it's absolutely what Apple should do for consumers. But I think the fallout is going to be really interesting to watch. Now, I think that this is going to impact great products less than it's going to impact products where their success is more dependent on highly efficient marketing spend. So like we were talking about earlier, like some of these like wallpaper apps and stuff, like they're able to charge what they charge, or they're able to make what they make because they use these highly targeted ads, push people through a dark pattern funnel, make enough money to then go back and spend a bunch, and they're just churning through users really quickly. Like people aren't staying subscribed to those like very few people forget when they're paying $5 a week for a wallpaper app. Like they churn through subscribers very quickly, and it's just a tiny fraction of them that forget and end up paying the $250 a year. And so apps that don't have strong products that retain users, that drive word of mouth, that they're going to be impacted much more. And so a lot of those kind of apps have focused on building out these marketing engines versus building out a great product. And so the apps that have focused either on both or focused more on being a great product potentially, are going to have a little bit of an advantage in the fall. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know how it's all going to play out, but it's going to be a wild ride. Like, I mean, depending on whether or not Apple changes, I mean, I don't think they're going to make any changes to the IDFA. Like, it's clear, like data brokers have been, building these profiles without user consent, without regulation, without, and it's nearly impossible for Apple to regulate and punish and fine and everything. So I see very little chance that Apple changes their policy. They may delay it. Like if they really think like this is going to create a recession on the App Store, they may delay it, but the IDFA is going away. So what they might be able to change is either potentially delaying it so companies have more time to adjust, but then also SKI Network is actually pretty cool. Like there's some great stuff that they're doing with that, because you have all these MMPs that are middlemen between the ad networks and the platforms and the developers. And so if we can get Apple attribution versus having to rely on these third parties or rely on Facebook to do their own attribution, it could be an incredible thing for the ecosystem over the long haul. But in the short term, SK Ad Network leaves a lot to be desired. Like it's just not feature complete. So they're kind of they're pulling the rug out from under all the current tools, but then they're not offering enough to replace it yet. So yeah, it's gonna be a wild ride.
All right. Well, none of this is anything that I know anything about. So I'm glad you're here to answer all these questions. But all right, David, this might be a good way to say goodbye as well. Will and Lids asked the same question. David, are you available for a consultation to provide advice before I launch my app? Of course, they're willing to pay. And then Lids said the same thing. I have the same questions as Will. So where would you want the audience to contact you if they wanted some consultation help? If you even want it.
I have considered doing consulting, but it's really just kind of not my gig. If you're a RevenueCat customer or a subscription app, I do office hours. So you can get in touch with me, David@RevenueCat.com. Personally, I love building products and building apps. And so like, when I'm not working for RevenueCat, I want to build my products. So I don't want consulting clients. Sorry. I don't know. I mean, maybe if you offer me more money than I can refuse, I'd consider it. But at this point, like I'm really not interested in taking on consulting services. But again, if you're a subscription app and you want to chat, get in touch, David at RevenueCat.com, and I'll send you a link to my office hours. Yeah.
Cool. So David, thank you so much for coming on. If you guys do want to check out David's app, here they are. We got Weather app, Launch Center Pro, Group Text. So go check, just Google or search for any of these apps. And they're only iOS, right, David?
Yeah, I don't do any Android.
Yeah, so that was a question in there, but I wanted to make sure we answered that as well. So contrast.co is the website if you want to get in touch with David, non-consulting related type of questions. And then definitely go check out RevenueCat if you have a subscription-based app and you want to see all the numbers. And the cool thing that I heard David talk about too with RevenueCat is if you see, you can actually, RevenueCat will actually give you visibility on people who actually cancel. Like you don't have to wait a year. Let's say a user signs up for a yearly subscription, but they immediately cancel. You don't have to wait that long to know that they canceled. RevenueCat will show you that data as well. So go check out RevenueCat.
We'll trigger a webhook too, which is super cool. So like you can send out a cancellation survey within hours of them turning off that auto renew. Wow. Yeah, so we can trigger webhooks, push that to Mixpanel or Amplitude or your own data warehouse. So yeah, we got some. If you're a subscription app, like, I mean, you know, I work there, so it's you can take this for what it's worth. But like, I also use the product personally, and like, we're building some really cool stuff for subscription apps. So I'm super excited. Like we have a huge team dedicated just to building cool stuff for subscription apps. So it's awesome. Kind of sells itself over time.
We'll do a deeper dive on RevenueCat in the future as well. Thank you guys for joining. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Lids. Thank you, Magpie Apps as well. I apologize that we couldn't get through some of these app audits. I will get to that next week where we may or may not have a guest. So maybe we can get through all these app audits and answer any of your questions. David, if the audience wants to follow up, besides all the websites I've mentioned, do you want to send them anywhere else?
I mean, you can follow me on Twitter. I rant about all sorts of crap on Twitter. Dr. Barnard on Twitter.
Dr. Barnard on Twitter, and I'll link that into the show notes as well. David, thank you so much for coming on and doing this.
Hey, this is a blast, Steve.
Thank you guys for being here. We'll see you guys next week, same time, Friday, 9 a.m. Pacific. Thank you guys for joining. I appreciate you all, and I'll see you next week. Bye.